Why daughters clash with their mothers, the Jungian truth behind the conflict. She was supposed to be your best friend, your guide, your safe harbor. Instead, every conversation feels like walking through a minefield. You love her, but somehow you can never quite get along. If you've ever wondered why you and your mother seem locked in an endless cycle of misunderstanding, criticism, and conflict, you're not alone. Today, we're diving deep into one of psychology's most fascinating mysteries, the mother-daughter relationship. But we're not just scratching the surface with generic advice. We're going to explore the hidden psychological forces that Carl Jung discovered, forces that explain why even the most loving mothers and daughters can find themselves in seemingly impossible battles. We're going to uncover the unconscious patterns, the inherited wounds, and the archetypal forces that shape one of the most complex relationships in human experience. Whether you're a daughter struggling to understand your mother, or a mother wondering why your relationship feels so difficult, this video will change how you see this sacred bond forever. Make sure to hit that subscribe button and the notification bell, because we're about to embark on a psychological journey that could transform your most important relationship. Let's begin. Segment 1, The Universal Struggle. Let me start with a story that might sound familiar. Sarah, a 28-year-old teacher, calls her mother every Sunday. Without fail, within 10 minutes, they're arguing. Her mother criticizes her apartment, her dating choices, her career decisions. Sarah hangs up feeling frustrated, guilty, and somehow smaller. Sound familiar? Here's what's fascinating. Sarah's mother genuinely loves her daughter and wants the best for her. Sarah deeply respects her mother and values her opinion. So why does every interaction feel like a battle? Research shows that 70% of adult daughters report having complicated relationships with their mothers. That's not a coincidence. It's pointing to something much deeper than individual personality conflicts. Storytelling element. Think about your own relationship for a moment. Maybe you're the daughter who feels like nothing you do is ever good enough. Or perhaps you're the mother who watches your daughter make what seem like obvious mistakes, and you can't understand why she won't listen to your hard-earned wisdom. The truth is, what we're witnessing isn't just family drama. It's the playing out of ancient psychological patterns that Carl Jung called archetypal dynamics. And once you understand these patterns, everything starts to make sense. Engagement hook. Drop a comment below if you've ever had one of those conversations with your mother where you both walked away thinking, how did that escalate so quickly? Because what I'm about to share will explain exactly why that happens, and more importantly, what you can do about it. Segment 2, Jung's revolutionary insight. Carl Gustav Jung wasn't just any psychologist. He was the man who gave us concepts like introversion, extroversion, and the collective unconscious. But perhaps his most profound insight was about something he called psychological inheritance. Jung discovered that we don't just inherit our parents' eye color and height. We inherit their unresolved psychological conflicts, their unfulfilled dreams, and their unconscious patterns. And nowhere is this more evident than in the mother-daughter relationship. Core concept explanation. Here's the key insight. Every mother carries within her what Jung called the eternal feminine archetype, but also its shadow. She carries both the nurturing mother and the devouring mother, the wise woman and the wounded child. And here's what's crucial. She unconsciously projects both aspects onto her relationship with her daughter. Now, the daughter isn't just receiving love and guidance. She's also receiving her mother's unresolved wounds, her unfulfilled potential, and her unconscious fears. It's like inheriting a house that comes with both treasures and ghosts in the attic. Relatable example. Let me give you a concrete example. Maria's mother grew up in poverty and never had the chance to pursue higher education. When Maria announced she was dropping out of her PhD program to start an art business, her mother's reaction was intense and seemingly disproportionate. But through a Jungian lens, we can see what was really happening. Maria's mother wasn't just responding to her daughter's decision. She was responding to her own unlived life, her own dreams deferred. The intensity of her reaction came from a place much deeper than parental concern. It came from her own wounded relationship with potential and possibility. Viewer engagement. I want you to think about the conversations with your mother that feel the most charged. What topics always seem to trigger the strongest reactions? Hold on to that thought, because we're about to dive deeper into how these patterns form. Segment 3, the archetypal mother. Jung identified what he called the mother archetype, a universal pattern that exists in the collective unconscious of all humanity. This archetype has two primary faces, the good mother and the terrible mother. And every real mother embodies both. The good mother. The good mother is nurturing, protective, wise, and unconditionally loving. She's the mother who kisses scraped knees, who believes in her daughter's dreams, who provides the safe base from which her daughter can explore the world. The terrible mother. But the terrible mother is equally real. She's possessive, controlling, critical, and devouring. She's the mother who can't let go, who sees her daughter as an extension of herself, who unconsciously sabotages her daughter's independence because it threatens her own sense of identity. Crucial insight. Here's what most people don't understand. The same mother can embody both archetypes, sometimes within the same conversation, and daughters intuitively sense this duality, which creates a profound psychological conflict. Storytelling moment. Jennifer remembers her mother as both her greatest champion and her harshest critic. She would drive me to ballet practice, sit in the front row at every recital, and then on the way home, point out everything I did wrong. I could never figure out if she loved me or was disappointed in me. What Jennifer experienced wasn't inconsistency. It was the natural expression of the archetypal mother complex. Her mother's love was real, but so was her unconscious need to control and perfect. Jung's deeper insight. Jung discovered something even more profound. He found that daughters don't just respond to their actual mothers, they respond to the archetypal mother energy their mother carries. This means that even the most well-intentioned mother can trigger archetypal responses in her daughter that seem to come out of nowhere. Viewer hook. Have you ever noticed how your mother can say something in a particular tone of voice, and suddenly you feel like you're 8 years old again? That's not weakness, that's your psyche responding to archetypal energies, and understanding this is the first step to freedom. Segment 4, the daughter's dilemma. Now let's look at this from the daughter's perspective, because she faces what Jung called the fundamental dilemma of individuation. Every daughter must somehow separate from her mother to become herself. But this separation often feels like betrayal, both to her mother and to herself. The psychological bind. Picture this. To become a healthy, independent adult, a daughter must psychologically kill the internal mother, meaning she must stop being controlled by her mother's expectations, fears, and unlived dreams. But this psychological separation often triggers intense guilt, because it can feel like she's rejecting or abandoning the person who gave her life. Real story example. Take Rebecca, a 35-year-old lawyer. She describes feeling guilty every time she makes a decision her mother wouldn't approve of, from her career choices to how she raises her children. I know I'm an adult, she says, but I still hear my mother's voice in my head, and when I don't follow it, I feel like I'm being a bad daughter. Jung's insight on guilt. Jung understood that this guilt isn't personal, it's archetypal. The daughter is responding to millions of years of evolutionary programming that says separation from mother equals death. Even though intellectual she knows this isn't true, her unconscious still carries this ancient fear. The mother's side. Meanwhile, the mother experiences her daughter's individuation as a kind of death, too. The child she raised, the relationship she knew, the sense of being needed. All of this must die for the adult relationship to be born. And most mothers haven't been taught how to navigate this transformation. Deeper layer. But here's where it gets even more complex. Jung discovered that daughters don't just inherit their mother's conscious qualities. They inherit her shadow, her unlived potential, and her unresolved conflicts. So the daughter finds herself living out patterns that aren't even originally hers. Practical example, Lisa's mother was a brilliant woman who gave up her career to raise her family in the 1950s. Lisa found herself driven to achieve in ways that felt almost compulsive and couldn't understand why success never felt satisfying. Through Jungian analysis, she discovered she was trying to live her mother's unlived career dreams. But dreams that belonged to a different person in a different era. Reflection, prompt. I want you to pause for a moment and ask yourself, what aspects of your personality or your life choices might actually belong to your mother's unlived story rather than your own authentic self? This question can be uncomfortable, but it's also liberating. Segment 5, the shadow projection. Now we come to perhaps the most challenging aspect of the mother-daughter dynamic, shadow projection. This is where Jung's insights become truly revolutionary and explain why even loving mothers and daughters can find themselves in cycles of seemingly irrational conflict. Defining the shadow. Jung defined the shadow as all the parts of ourselves that we cannot accept or acknowledge. For mothers, this often includes their own unfulfilled potential, their regrets, their fears, and their disappointments. And unconsciously, they often project these shadow elements onto their daughters. How shadow projection works. Here's a concrete example. Margaret grew up believing she wasn't smart enough for college, so she never pursued higher education. When her daughter Emma struggles with academic confidence, Margaret's reaction is intense and disproportionate. She becomes overly critical, pushing Emma in ways that feel harsh and unloving. What's really happening? Margaret is seeing her own unlived intellectual potential in Emma, but also her own fears and self-doubt. She's simultaneously trying to heal her own wound through her daughter and protect Emma from the pain she experienced. But Emma experiences this as criticism and lack of faith in her abilities. The daughter's shadow. Daughters have their own shadow projections too. Often they project their own need for approval, their fears of abandonment, or their anger about family patterns onto their mothers. They might see their mother as more controlling or critical than she actually is, because they're projecting their own internal critical voice onto her. Complex example. Sarah constantly feels judged by her mother about her appearance and life choices. But when we look deeper, Sarah realizes that the harsh, internal voice she hears isn't actually her mother's voice. It's her own internalized critic that she learned from multiple sources, including but not limited to her mother. She's been attributing her own self-criticism to her mother for years. The unconscious dance. Jung observed that mothers and daughters often get locked in what he called unconscious dances, repetitive patterns where each person triggers the other's deepest wounds and fears. Neither person is consciously choosing this dynamic, but both are caught in it. Breakthrough story. When Patricia, a 52-year-old mother, realized she was projecting her own fear of aging onto her 23-year-old daughter's choices about marriage and children, everything changed. I thought I was giving her good advice, she says, but I was actually trying to get her to live the life that would make me feel secure about my own choices. Viewer engagement. This is heavy material, I know, but here's why it's so important. Once you can see these projections clearly, you can begin to reclaim your own authentic self. Both mothers and daughters can step out of these unconscious dances and relate to each other as whole, separate people. Segment 6, the complex in action. Jung didn't just theorize about these dynamics, he observed them, playing out in what he called complexes. A complex is like a psychological software program running in the background of your mind, influencing your thoughts, emotions, and behaviors without your conscious awareness. The mother complex. Every daughter develops what Jung called a mother complex, a cluster of emotions, memories, expectations, and reactions centered around the archetypal mother figure. This complex gets activated in specific situations and can completely override your rational, adult self. Recognizing complex activation. You know your mother complex is activated when you find yourself reacting to your mother or to situations that remind you of your mother in ways that feel automatic, intense, and somehow out of proportion. Your body might tense up, your voice might change. You might feel suddenly young and powerless. Detailed example. Catherine, a successful 40-year-old business owner, describes what happens when she visits her mother. The moment I walk into that house, I become a different person. I start apologizing for things I haven't done wrong. I second-guess decisions I'm confident about in my own life, and I find myself reverting to behavioral patterns I thought I'd outgrown decades ago. The mother's complex. Mothers have complexes too, often centered around their own mothers, their fears about motherhood, and their unconscious beliefs about what it means to be a good mother. These complexes get triggered by their daughter's choices, especially choices that challenge their own life decisions. Case study: Diana reacts intensely whenever her daughter talks about traveling the world before settling down. Diana married young and had children immediately, and though she doesn't consciously regret her choices, her daughter's different path triggers her own unlived adventurous spirit. Her complex makes her criticize her daughter's irresponsibility, when she's really grieving her own unlived freedom. The positive complex. But Jung also noted that complexes aren't always negative. A positive mother complex might make a daughter feel deeply supported and capable of anything. However, even positive complexes can become limiting if they prevent the daughter from developing her own sense of self-worth independent of her mother's approval. Breaking free from complexes. The goal isn't to eliminate these complexes. Jung believed that was impossible and even undesirable. The goal is to become conscious of them. When you can recognize that you're in a complex state, you can choose how to respond, rather than being unconsciously driven by old patterns. Practical insight. Here's a powerful exercise. The next time you notice yourself having a strong reaction to something your mother says or does, pause and ask yourself, how old do I feel right now? Often you'll discover you're not responding as your current adult self, but as a much younger version of yourself who is still carrying old wounds or fears. Segment 7. The path to healing. Now comes the question everyone's been waiting for. How do we heal these patterns? Jung's approach wasn't about blame or quick fixes. It was about consciousness, integration, and what he called individuation. The individuation process. Individuation is Jung's term for becoming who you really are, separate from your family patterns, cultural conditioning, and unconscious identifications. For daughters, this means differentiating between what belongs to them and what belongs to their mother's stories. Step 1. Conscious awareness. The first step is developing what Jung called conscious awareness of the patterns. This means learning to observe your reactions with curiosity rather than judgment. When you feel triggered, instead of immediately reacting, you pause and ask, what's happening here? What pattern is being activated? Success story. Amanda describes her breakthrough moment. I was on the phone with my mom, and I felt that familiar frustration building. But instead of hanging up angry like usual, I got curious. I realized I was hearing criticism that wasn't actually there. I was projecting my own self-doubt onto her words. When I clarified what she actually meant, the whole conversation shifted. Step 2. Reclaiming. Projections. The second step involves reclaiming your projections. This means recognizing when you're seeing your own unlived potential, your own fears, or your own critical voice in your mother, and taking responsibility for those aspects of yourself. Step 3. Honoring both separation and connection. Jung understood that healthy relationships require what he called relatedness and separateness. This means you can maintain deep love and connection with your mother while also being fully yourself, not an extension of her dreams, fears, or expectations. The mother's healing journey. For mothers, healing involves recognizing their own unfulfilled aspects and finding ways to nurture those parts of themselves rather than living them through their daughters. This is often the most challenging work because it requires grieving what never was while celebrating what is. Profound example. Ruth, a 60-year-old mother, realized she had been pushing her daughter toward marriage because she was terrified of being alone in her own widowhood. When I started dealing with my own loneliness and fear of aging, I could finally see my daughter's choices as her own, not as abandonment of me. Our relationship transformed completely. Integration practices. Jung emphasized that healing isn't a one-time event. It's an ongoing practice of integration. This might include therapy, journaling, meditation, or simply developing the habit of pausing before reacting in old patterns. The gift of consciousness. When both mothers and daughters begin this work, something beautiful happens. The relationship becomes a place of mutual growth rather than unconscious wounding. Instead of being locked in archetypal patterns, they can relate as conscious, individuated human beings who happen to share a profound biological and emotional bond. Segment 8. Practical Transformation Tools. Let's get practical. Based on Jung's insights, here are specific tools you can use to transform your mother-daughter relationship. Starting today, for daughters. Tool 1. The Inner Observer. Develop what Jung called the inner observer. A part of you that can watch your reactions without being consumed by them. When you notice yourself getting triggered, silently say, "I notice I'm having a strong reaction right now. I wonder what this is about." Tool 2. The Projection. Reclaim. When you find yourself criticizing or judging your mother, ask yourself, what quality am I seeing in her that I might also have but am not acknowledging in myself? Often what irritates us most in others is a reflection of our own shadow. Tool 3. Timeline Awareness. Before important conversations with your mother, take a moment to consciously connect with your current adult self. Remind yourself of your accomplishments, your wisdom, your capability. This helps prevent regression to earlier developmental stages during the conversation. For mothers, Tool 1, the Unlived Life Inventory. Make a list of dreams, goals, or experiences you never pursued. Ask yourself honestly, am I trying to live any of these through my daughter? This awareness allows you to take responsibility for your own fulfillment rather than projecting it onto your daughter's choices. Tool 2, the Advice Pause. Before giving advice, pause and ask yourself, is this wisdom she actually needs, or am I trying to resolve my own anxiety about her choices? Often, our helpful advice is actually us trying to feel better about situations we can't control. Tool 3, celebrating differences. Practice celebrating the ways your daughter is different from you, rather than seeing differences as problems to be fixed. Jung believed that each individual has their own unique path of development, and this includes daughters who may choose very different lives than their mothers. For both, the conscious conversation technique. When you notice old patterns starting, try this. Stop and say something like, "I notice we're falling into an old pattern here. Can we start over?" This creates space for consciousness to enter the interaction. Boundary setting with love. Jung emphasized that healthy boundaries aren't walls, they're conscious choices about how to engage. You can love someone deeply while also protecting your own psychological space and growth. Example in action. Maria learned to say, "Mom, I love you and I value your opinion, and I'm going to make this decision based on what feels right for my life." No arguing, no defending, no attacking, just a clear, loving boundary. See, as we come to the end of this journey, I want to leave you with Jung's most profound insight about the mother-daughter relationship. He believed that these conflicts as painful as they can be, serve a deeper purpose in the evolution of consciousness. The evolutionary perspective. Every generation of daughters must differentiate from their mothers not just for their own individuation, but for the evolution of feminine consciousness itself. Each daughter who successfully individuates while maintaining connection creates a new template for future generations. Your struggles with your mother aren't just personal dramas. They're part of a larger healing process that's been going on for thousands of years. Every time you choose consciousness over unconscious reaction, you're contributing to this collective healing. The deeper gift. Jung observed that when mothers and daughters do this work, something magical happens. Not only does their relationship heal, but they both become more whole, more authentic, more capable of love. The daughter learns to trust her own inner wisdom while honoring her roots. The mother learns to love without possessing and to guide without controlling. Final call to action. If you've made it this far in the video, you're clearly ready to do this work. I want you to know that healing your mother-daughter relationship is one of the most profound gifts you can give yourself, your family line, and the world. Start small. Choose one insight from today that resonated with you and begin practicing with that. Whether you're the mother or the daughter in this relationship, you have the power to break unconscious patterns and create something beautiful. Community engagement. I'd love to hear about your experiences in the comments. What insight hit you the most deeply? What pattern did you recognize in your own relationship? Remember, we're all in this together, working toward more conscious, loving relationships. Subscribe call. If this video has been helpful, please subscribe and hit the notification bell. I'll be creating more content exploring Jung's insights into family relationships, personal growth, and the journey toward wholeness. Final thought, remember, the goal isn't a perfect relationship with your mother. The goal is a conscious one. And that journey starts with understanding the deeper forces at play. Forces that, once seen clearly, lose their power to control your life unconsciously.